Hello, everyone. Noreen here. Today, I bring to you another episode of In Conversation With, and today we're in conversation with Gavin. So, Gavin, thank you so much for joining us.
Noreen, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be here with you today.
Wonderful. So, Gavin, tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so thank you. I don't know if you can see the background, but I'm currently in Bangkok, so I'm by the river at the moment. So originally from Scotland, but I am currently now in Thailand, where I'm working at AIM, the Asian Institute of Hospitality Management, and I'm a lecturer here in both practical arts and also in academics. And our degree is a hospitality and business management degree. So we're looking at both sides of hospitality and also the business, marketing, finances, the fun element of it as well. So
Yeah,
that's where I am at the moment.
all of those play a role in hospitality, which also is what makes hospitality so interesting, right? Everyone will find their place within it as well.
Yes, indeed. I mean, I think that's one thing that I always say to people, and we'll touch on my background, but hospitality is much more than just hotels and restaurants. It's a huge area with a lot of different fields in it, and that's what's exciting. It's that opportunity to do many things, rewarding.
Absolutely. So yeah, let's start at the beginning and let me ask you this question. Why hospitality?
Maybe should I tell the honest answer, or should I say that? The only tell it sounds terrible when I say how did I get into hospitality, but I was actually in Aberdeen. I was studying business management. You know, this dream of working in a institutional bank and being an investment banker. I'll make lots of money and the world will be great. And I started working for Hilton, just collecting glasses, believe it or not, in the bar, sort of part-time work, and kind of fell into it by chance. Just started working in the hotel, and great atmosphere, make friends. I started collecting glasses, and then it was working on the bar, assistant bar manager, and then sort of worked up the ladder. Stayed with Hilton, very good company from a sense of like training and management. You learn a lot with them. And then after that, moved on to open a 5-star hotel in Edinburgh on the food and beverage side. So my background's been more on the food and beverage side. And then I went into public sector. I went to Edinburgh University, but again, in hospitality. And again, this is what I mean. People forget university. They think, oh, you're a lecturer, you're an academic, but there's all these things that happen in the background to keep these organizations running. So, and then I went into sporting and race courses and that side of it. And then eventually ended up in London in a hospital. So again, I'm not a doctor. Don't really like the sight of blood. But again, guys in St Thomas's NHS Foundation Trust, 19,000 staff, multiple sites across London, huge organisation. So again, imagine there's so much hospitality that goes into that, from day-to-day training of staff, royal visits, filming with James Bond. There's so many different angles to it. So again, a varied career, I would say. It's quite hard to try and explain my career because it's been a little bit of everything. And I mean, that's what Warren, our academic dean, always kind of introduces me as, the generalist, somebody who's done everything and can encompass a lot of different angles.
Yeah, it's so true. Like whether you're working in any kind of establishment, there is hospitality in its backbone, right? To make sure that everything is running smoothly, people are getting fed, people are getting trained,
Yes.
people are looked after. Yeah, it is definitely an art that touches every sector, I suppose.
And I think it's in London. Sorry, so just saying, in London, it was like, I mean, very terrible. We had some major incidents during my time in London. But during a major incident, the first thing almost is to get everybody a cup of tea, just to calm everyone down. Like, okay, everyone, cup of tea, sit down, here's some water, something to eat, and it's important. It's important. Obviously, the medical stuff's important, but just that reassurance and just having that somebody there just to make sure everybody's fed, watered, warm, and they have something to eat or drink. So yes, very important.
Yeah, there's nothing better than a cup of tea, indeed.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
So I think what I'd love to spend a little bit of time on today is talking about the experiences that you've had between public sector and private sector, because obviously you've done both. So what are some of the differences you've seen between the two sectors?
I mean, both sectors have advantages and disadvantages, and I actually wrote a paper on it as part of my degree. But for me, the public sector is more about the openness, awareness, and protection. So it's kind of like three elements to it. Open in the sense of they're very transparent with staff training on the issues that females and males face. So it's not just one angle, just looking at it from both angles and how everybody can help each other. Whether it's through females through periods, with how do we deal with menopause and how do we deal with that in the office environment. So again, it's that awareness, is the openness, that everybody's more free to talk about it. We're not so shy, we're not so embarrassed to talk about it. And it's the protection in the sense of there's less fear, dare I say, in the public sector. I think people feel more protected in the work, that they can speak out if they have a problem or if they have concerns. Somebody will listen to them and it will be actioned on. And for me, that's where the public sector would be leaning towards. And the private sector is maybe a little bit behind. Not to say everyone, but there is certainly still that gulf and divide between the two.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I had never really thought of it from that perspective. And yeah, that openness, right? Being able to share whatever you need to share that's on your mind, whether it's personal or professional, and to know that you're in that sort of inclusive environment that invites that type of conversation, which is something that's, very important to me. So based on that experience, what would you say that the private sector could learn from the public sector?
I think so. I mean, private sector is obviously very much goal driven. So it's about your KPIs, it's about the targets, it's about the bottom line. And public sector, we are still managing taxpayers' monies in some cases, or grants, loans, charities, whatever it might be. But it's the fact that you do actually have to spend the time to invest and train staff, make staff knowledgeable, and have that open forum where people can come out and discuss it. Because your productivity will actually end up increasing and will be better across the long term, rather than just focusing on this narrow-minded, okay, we're coming up to year end, we're off by our targets, but this much we need to push, we need to get everybody really working. And and you've got a couple of members of staff, they're having an off day, they're not feeling great, or there's something going on. And rather than trying to force it, it's how do we work with it to try and improve and try and make it as you say, more inclusive environment where there's less fear. And it's again, we don't like to use these words, but I think we have to be honest that the fear exists, the guilt exists, and also it's the guilt from the staff's point of view. Like they feel guilty about having to speak out or raise concerns, and it's like, oh, I'm suffering. Is it going to be taken seriously? Am I going to be laughed at? Am I going to get support? And we shouldn't have that environment, but it exists, and I think that's the reality that still needs to be faced.
It's interesting what you were saying about the short term. And I think, unfortunately, when we work in hospitality, being like a 24/7 environment, the customer's in front of you, you just need to deal with the problems. I think we've kind of created a mentality for ourselves that just solve what's right in front of you. And I don't know how much of the long-term thinking that we're thinking about, which I think if we did a bit more, it would lend to, having a higher retention within hospitality, because if they can see that they have a career path in front of them, then they can feel like, okay, that, my career is being invested in. So that means I will want to stay in here, in this role, in this company for the long term.
Yeah. I mean, you're right. And it's kind of like the awareness and training, which then leads into this. And again, we touched on the public sector has greater job security. Mm-hmm. And that's something the private sector needs to pull back. Is okay, like how can we make our people, as you say, it's more secure in the long term. If they were to get pregnant or something was to happen, that they can come back, and there is that balance. And also, I think it's like, if we look at the research, the pay gap is quite an interesting one. So the pay gap in the private sector is still quite wide and disproportionate across the board, whereas in public sector, the pay gap is a lot narrower and is more equal. And again, I mean, it's almost it's stepping back. Public sector is under a lot more scrutiny. The governments have to answer to people. There's a lot, the CQC come and audit hospitals. There's a lot more transparency and again the openness again about what goes on and questions are raised. Whereas in the private sector, company to company, they can do what they want as long as it's legal and it's moral and it's ethical. They can pay what they want. There's no, are you paying minimum wage? Yes, right, okay. So that's a big area as well.
Yeah, it goes back to, I guess the differences is really, whether it's that goal driven in the private sector and you're more answerable to, I guess, shareholders in that sense, if you're, a public limited company. But then from the public sector, yeah, it's taxpayers' money, it's government, it's definitely a lot more public, obviously, that you have to be transparent. So I think that culture then, I guess, embeds itself within any of those organizations. And, you've obviously worked for many different companies, both private and public sector, across different countries as well now. What would you say, are there any private sector companies that you've seen that are doing things perhaps a little bit differently?
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely in the last years we are seeing a change, definitely seeing a change. And then I go back, I'll start with the Hilton, so I'm kind of, Hilton feels like my family. But Hilton, I mean, Hilton in America certainly lead the way, and they are ranked constantly #1 for having equal opportunities. They have like extended leave. They have debt-free education, which now I'm in the education field is a good one. So again, debt-free education for everybody. So a lot of time it could be that again, females have taken time off for pregnancy or looking after children and they want to come back to employment. So that ability to have the education free to bring you back up to speed, to get you back up to the level where the male colleagues are, is a great opportunity. And I think that's something that should be applauded. And again, it's not about money, it's not about training, it's about self-development and lifelong learning, which again is something that's very important. And then closer to home, British Airways, I think British Airways has done a lot. Female pilots, they're very good on their social media about Women's Day. They quite often do the female-only plane where all the crew are female. Engineers, the gate staff, the crew, everybody's female. And then over here, I mean, I've come to Thailand and we're part of Minor Mint. And Minor, again, very good on the social media, very good on the promotion and the awareness. So again, it's things that they're doing to try and get the message out there that we want to be inclusive. We have a lot of female leaders. We're developing more female leaders. So it takes time, but there has been a big change. I mean, I think in the last years, there's a lot more transparency, openness, awareness between people. And again, males and females both shouting out, like, we need to change, we need to try and get more equality across all areas of business.
Yeah, it's definitely being talked about a lot more just in the last couple of years, 5 to 10 years compared to when I first, started out within a career journey as well. So that's great. And, having male allies like you are definitely going to help, bring the topics forward and start making some of those change happen. And I remember is when we met, you were talking about some of the female managers that you've had who've influenced your career. So tell us a little bit about that and what impact it had.
Again, I think it's like sometimes you need to sort of step back and reflect on where you've been. And it wasn't like when we had the conversation afterwards, I came back to you and said, and what I just realized most of my managers have been females. I don't, maybe that obviously has had a big impact on me. But if I go back, to Hilton, there was a lot of females. And then I remember a lady called Sophie Lesnoff, who was the GM of the 5-star hotel I went to. And a French lady, but, very open. The characteristics of it, there's a good balance between being friendly with the staff, but at the same time, everyone has the respect, they listen, they want to learn, and they develop. And on opening, I'm sure as opening a 5-star hotel, it's not easy. There's a lot of pressures, budgets. And then during my time at the race course, a lady called Vivian Kyles, who was heading up a race course. I mean, she went on to Ascot. So she's heading up Ascot, and she's got involved in a lot of non-executive director roles. So again, it's like spreading wings. And the last two ladies, which certainly had the biggest impact on me and made me really learn a lot, was during my time at Guy's and St Thomas's. I was there for 8 years. We had a lady called Amanda Millard, who was in head of our operational division, so head of portering, security, hospitality, all these elements. And again, a wonderful, wonderful person. And she would sit, listen to my ideas, give me creative feedback. It wasn't like, no, you can't do it. It was very much more of, okay, that's a good idea, but have we thought about this? We need to look at the money. how we're going to manage it, what's the constraints. So it's working with you rather than just kind of like, no, that's not how we're doing it. And Anita Knowles, who was director of communications, and I mean, I don't know how she does the role, because it's, NHS, there's a lot of scrutiny on it. We did a lot of royal visits, we did a lot of high level events. Things go wrong in the NHS, press all over it, and so calm, just so calm. That ability to keep everybody calm, to really focus, to sort of look at, right, what do we need to get done first? Let's prioritize step by step. And the biggest thing with these two ladies was the ability to bring everybody together, because you've got doctors, you've got security, you've got chief exec, you've got chief nurse, and doctors, great people, but they think they're number one all the time. And sometimes it needs that person who can manage them and say, okay, you're great, but we need to focus on this element first and get this sorted out. So I mean, when you step back, I just have so much respect for them in the sense of like how they're able to do it, how they're able to control, how they're able to manage everybody. And everybody had so much respect for them and just listened. And it's small details. And Anita would be sitting there and there's like a photo shoot happening. And she would go to the chairman and sort of say, so Hugh, this is not going to work. They're all male, or they're all white, or they're all too old, or they're too young. She knew exactly, okay, so, for appearance, we need to have this, and this, and that's what's going to work, and that's going to makes it work. And I think it's that attention to detail and understanding of the diversity and the inclusion that needs to be there to make the business organization work.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing. And yeah, I think a couple of things I'm taking away from then is, working with you, listening and giving you that creative feedback. The calmness, I think, is so important as well, especially in that kind of role. And yeah, bringing people together. I think that's a really, really important one that they've shared with you. So thank you so much for sharing these wonderful examples and the impact that they've had on you. And I'm going to move on to my final question and ask you, I guess, who else has inspired you? Who inspired you?
Yeah, I mean, it's obviously they're kind of like in the past, but they've impacted who I am now. But now I sit here, and I don't know, maybe it's hospitality. I was quite surprised when we came here. Our intake is a lot of females. We have more females in the intake at the moment than we do males. And these young females, I mean, it's something to behold. They are so driven, so passionate, so independent. They are so independent. They are doing everything for themselves, and they'll come to me and say, "I've got a few weeks off. I want to do something. What do you recommend I learn? I want to try something else. I want to learn a new language." And I'm just sitting there going, "This is great. This is what we need. This is the future. These are the people who are going to be going out there, and they are focusing on what they need to do to improve themselves. They're taking the lead. They're standing up for themselves. They're developing a sense of community within themselves. They're going out onto their internships. We've got the general manager saying, like, I want Julie, I want Soft, I want Jenny, I want these people here working for me." And they're really making an impact already. And they're only 19, 20. They've got their whole lives ahead of them, but they're already making that impact. And I think it's great to see that they are now feeling strong enough that they can come out and do that.
That's really wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And yeah, for a really, really wonderful conversation.
No, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much. And thank you to you for everything that you are doing as well to help everybody in hospitality and as you say, the industry in general, because the more the word gets out there across all fields.
Yeah, and it's working together and hearing all the voices and all the stories. I've spoken to you, I've spoken to some of your students, and also, I've had interviews of women all around the world. But yeah, it's collectively that we need to make this change happen.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Okay.